You guys having a happy day? Yes. That didn't sound like it. You guys having a happy day? Yes. It's a beautiful morning outside, isn't it? Yes. It is. We spent this weekend at a football camp with our oldest, Princeton University. He's all fancy. So we're a family of 5. We've got 2 little ones, which are slightly insane. Have any of you ever seen the movie 4 Christmases? 4 Christmases? Well, there's two brothers in that movie called Dallas and Denver. That's them. That's them. If you haven't seen it, it's pretty funny. It's a good, pretty modern take on a Christmas classic. So pretty fun. And then we have our oldest, Kenan, who is 6'7". He's a giant. You won't miss him. And then there is my wife, Melinda, and then you got my ugly mug, so you're just out of luck there. So my name is Jeff Luchin, and I've been in this area now for about 20 years, and it is a pleasure to be here this morning, so thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm wearing my glasses so I can see what I have in front of me, but not you. So, Jim told me, he might fall asleep because he's got his grandkid duty this weekend, and I won't know because you guys are just blurry. So, I'm sorry. I can do this, and then I can see you, which is great, but now I can't see this. So I'm at that age where I have to, get that dirty, awful word, bifocals. But I refuse.
Not so bad.
It's not so bad? Okay. I'll consider that. So this morning, I want to tell you a little bit about myself and tell you a little bit about where God has taken me on my journey of spiritual formation. Just kind of worked into the sermon here, if that's all right with you guys. Is that good? So growing up, my father, who was my adoptive father, would oftentimes pick up jobs at a local farm. And we would go to the farm, and I'd go with him just because I was a rambunctious, 6-year-old, 4-year-old, and I would play with some of the kids that lived on the farm, and we would, go dive into the hay bales. We'd climb to the top of all of the hay bales, slide off, jump off. We'd swing on the rope that would ding the bell, so the farmers knew when to come in for meals and stuff. And they would get mad at us for that because we wouldn't do it on meal times. We would just be dinging it because we'd be swinging around. And so it was great fun. And a lot of times when we would be there, it would be, at the end of the season, he's needing help because everyone else has gone home. And every once in a while, we'd get there in the beginning of the season. And I'd get to ride on some of the big farm machinery. Okay. Now, I'm not a farmer, okay? These are tan thumbs. There's nothing green about these thumbs. I'm not a planter. I will kill anything that is alive. That's why Melinda's around, so that doesn't happen to us. And, we would just, roll over because I'm not going to be able to grow, harvest any type of plants. So I don't know what these machines are called. They were just big. They were big things, and we get to ride on them. And so we ride on them, and they'd, till the ground, they'd work the soil, they'd then go back through, and they'd create the rows, and then they'd plant the seeds through the rows. And they'd come back through and just kind of till it back over so everything was, underground, ready to go. The whole point is, though, that in order for the seeds to be planted in the ground where they needed to be, the soil had to first be worked. The soil had to be tilled. It had to be prepared to receive the seed. See, a lot of times, that's where we are. What I learned through that process is that if the ground hasn't been loved on, it's going to reject the seed that's been planted in it. And so, in our lives, we have to oftentimes remember that when the seed has been planted, there are different types of soil that can receive it. And we can be a few different types of soil at once, but I guarantee we're all one of these four that Jesus describes in this parable found in Matthew chapter 13. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read that for us real quick here. Matthew 13, we're going to look at verses 3 through 9. And it says, "And he told them many things in parables, saying, A sower went out to sow. And he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up. But since they didn't have any depth in the soil, the sun rose and they were scorched. And since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear." Let's pray. Father, as we come before you this morning, let your word be spoken. Let your words fill our ears, fill our hearts, that, Lord, you will be glorified in what is done in this church. Lord, that it's not the people that are here that are gathered. It is you, your Spirit, that is at work in this church, in 5 Points, and Father, all over Norview, Virginia, North America, and the world. We thank you, Father, for your work here. So one of the first types of soil that we see here is the soil on the path. Okay, can we go back to those verses? So this path that you see here, this path is actually a well-worn road in Jesus' day. This is actually the road to Emmaus. And so as you walk along the road to Emmaus, you don't see a clear path like we have where, there's just paved roads going forward. Right? You see there's clumps of dirt, there's rocks, there's what looks like a semblance of a roadway, but it's not flat out clear. This is where horses and carriages can come through pretty easily, but it's going to be a bumpy ride. See, a lot of times when we are looking at soils, we become like the path soil. It's well worn. It's been trampled on for years. And what happens is we get calloused to the things found in God's Word. We get calloused to the work of the Spirit in our life because we work through our own knowledge and do what we want to do 90% of the time anyway. And we blame it on God. And so as we look at the path, many times our hearts and minds begin to grow weary. And we miss the point. We walk along the path of this roadway and we toss some seeds down. And they just kind of sit there on the ground. Right? You guys ever give bread to birds?
Yes.
Okay? Don't do it at the ocean front. Please. Okay, don't do it at the ocean front, because then they're going to come after me. And I don't share. If you haven't noticed, I don't share very much. Okay. So we have this bread and we share it along. We pass the seeds along the road, but instead of the seeds being then stepped on and worked into the ground, because the ground is so callous and harsh, it just rests on the top. And birds come along and they pluck up the seeds and they take the seeds and they eat the seeds and then they drop the seeds further off somewhere else. And now all of a sudden you've got this random strawberry plant growing in the middle of your backyard and you don't know where it came from. I'm not speaking from, that's what's happening in our backyard. We don't know where it came from, but we have strawberries growing. It's great. Until our dog goes on it. Then you don't want to eat it. So, we oftentimes have this soil, and a lot of times as we sow the seeds along the path, we give out of our abundance and not out of our sacrifice. We give what we have because it's easy to give what we have, instead of truly digging deep into our hearts to see what God wants for us to begin, where God wants for us to go. And in those times, our hearts and our minds aren't able to be penetrated because we've grown these calluses to be harsh. Like I said, we've been taking our oldest son along, and early on when some coaches were shaking his hand, they'd look at his hand because they want to see the calluses on his knuckles from working out. They want to see that he's been moving some weight because he's going to be an offensive lineman. So they want to make sure that he's got the strength to do it. And early on, he was young, so he didn't have those calluses. Now he was shaking his hands, he got some calluses on him. I don't, because I'm soft. Just telling you. Just telling you a little bit about myself. I have little bitty calluses. I don't move the way he does. See, oftentimes when we allow ourselves to be calloused, what happens is, in the end, others come behind us, and they are able to regather the seeds planted and bring those people along in their spiritual journey and replant and reestablish and work their soil so that they become a wholehearted, fully developed, mature disciple of Christ. But it's only because someone else came along behind you. You didn't get to reap the harvest of the seeds you planted because we didn't plant seeds. We didn't prepare the soil. We just tossed it out like it was nothing. When in reality, God wants us to prepare the soil. The second type of soil we have here is rocky soil. It says, other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched. Since they had no root, they withered away. So this next picture we look at is another pathway in Israel. This is just full of rocks, though. Okay, this is what they would call at that time a roadway. Okay, we have roads like this, cobblestone roads over in, like Tazewell, that area of Norfolk, Freemason. We've got some cobblestone roads still that are original to this area. And you're able to see and journey through these classic historic roads. And you get the idea that they've been around for a long time. You can kind of see the soil that's been there and worked along the top, the more the roads get trampled on and worn. See, we can come along these rocky paths and we can plant, we can sow seeds all over the place. We can sow seeds. And sometimes they'll fall in the right spot at the right time with the right amount of soil, and the right amount of rain will hit them. And what will happen is it will begin to grow. It'll begin to blossom and grow up a little bit. And then that sun comes out. We know the sun here, right? We know the sun. And all of a sudden the sun shines down upon this rocky soil where the one seed that was just right, at the right angle, the right soil, at the right spot, has just blossomed a little bit up, and now the sun begins to scorch it. And it withers up, and it falls, and it dies, and it just gets trampled like this. See, a lot of times in our lives, we are that seed. We may have come to church for a long time. We may have, played many roles in Sunday school. We may have played roles in church leadership. We may be, this superstar Christian. But your root isn't all that deep. And that's okay. What we want to do is bring that little seedling and replant it so that it can grow deep, strong roots that aren't just roots of, little strings, like if you ever pull a young seedling out of the ground. Not that I would ever do that to God's creation all the time as a kid. And you'd pull that, little bitty corn stalk. Oops, sorry, farmer. And you'd pull that thing right out of the ground, and there were just little tiny roots hanging there. Sometimes we do that, and we see that there's tiny roots. But we want to grow roots that are deep, long-lasting, that go down into the soil, that grow out to create this monster-sized, like a stalk of corn this big. We're getting Kennan-sized corn stalks off that, ears of corn off that thing. Get it because he's a giant. I tell horrible jokes. I promise to keep telling them, but they're going to be all bad. I'm just going to warn you now. So, maybe you feel as though, you've been here at this church for a long time. You've got a heritage here. Maybe you're here because of a program. Maybe you're here because, your family has always gone here and it's where you want to go. But the question is, what are your spiritual roots like? Because it's great to have 3-4 generations at a church. Trust me, that's awesome. That happens very rarely. But if your roots aren't strong, and you're just living in the midst of your flesh, you're making decisions based on your own decisions, those roots are going to get scorched. And you're going to miss out on some of the most amazing growth you'll ever experience in your life. Maybe you feel as though you've got nothing to give. Maybe it's because the soil of your heart needs to be tended. See, Norview will be a church to tend, nourish, fertilize the soil of your heart and mind so that we can become fully mature disciples of Jesus Christ. But this is only going to happen if we begin to surrender ourselves to the Spirit's work. We need to surrender ourselves to His harvest. And when we allow the presence of the Spirit of God to fall upon us, and we begin to let Him lead and guide us through all life's decisions, that's when your harvest is going to become ready. That's when you're going to see that you are completely different than what you had ever hoped or imagined you could be. And you're going to see that God is good all the time. Next we see the thorny soil. There are other seeds that fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and they choked them. If you look at this next picture here, you see a field full of thorns. These are thorns actually found in Israel. We don't know specific types of thorns used as the crown of thorns for Jesus' head. This is one of the options. So these are huge thorns. Okay, I don't know if you've ever been picked by a thorn on a rose. It hurts. These are going to hurt a little bit more. These are going to go in a little bit deeper. And here's the thing. These thorns are clearly able to grow and flourish in the soil. They receive water, they fertilize to grow. The problem is these thorns are pervasive. These thorns are going to grow up and they're going to wipe out any other type of growth that's in that area. Now, one of the things I love bamboo. Okay, it's like one of the most versatile plants in all of the world. It's also one of the most pervasive plants in all of the world. You plant one thing of, I just would like, did that ever happen to you guys? Yeah. So you plant that one stalk, right? And then it grows all over the place. Bamboo clears out whole areas. How many of you guys have ever been to City View Park over right at the border of Chesapeake and Virginia Beach, over across the street from Alexandria neighborhood? Okay, there's a park over there. It's an awesome park. But they made the mistake of planting bamboo in the back of it. There is a huge bamboo maze that you can now walk through in the back of it because it has just taken over. Now, it's beautiful. It's fun to walk through. It's even fun sometimes, kids don't do this, to hit other people with the bamboo. I'm not saying Kenan ever did that to me. I'm just saying. We spent a lot of time in that park. And so sometimes this bamboo can be very pervasive, and it grows and it outgrows everything. Thorns are exactly the same way. It'll outgrow everything. It outpaces whatever else has been planted there. So along this path, we walk along and we plant, we toss out some seeds, and these seeds fall to the ground, and they get worked in, and they start to grow. And we think, oh, right, yeah, they're really coming along in their spiritual life. They're really taking a hold of what God has for them. Then you don't see them for a Sunday. And you don't see them for another Sunday. And you don't see them for another Sunday. And all of a sudden we wonder what happened. It's the thorns of their heart and mind, the thorns that they've allowed to creep into their life are choking out their spiritual journey. They're choking out their intuitive nature to walk in line with the Spirit. And they're getting choked out. And we let that happen. We let that happen. We as the church let that happen. We as individuals let that happen in our own lives. See, we can be a church that is different than that. We need to not allow other people or bad situations or circumstances to dictate how our pursuit of God flows from our lives. If we allow other people or other circumstances to dictate how our spiritual walk goes, they're going to lead us down the wrong path. It could be the path of thorns. It could be the path of rocks. It could be the well-worn path. Whatever it is, we can oftentimes allow other people to dictate our spiritual growth. Sometimes we need to shut out the naysayers, the hindrances, and the negatives from our heart and mind, and allow the Spirit's guidance to shape your heart and your mind as you read, study, meditate, pray, focus your everything on God's Word and at His Word. See, it's the Spirit's presence in our lives that is going to plant, nourish, and harvest our heart and mind. It's the Spirit's presence in us. And as the Spirit's present, we need to then reflect for God's glory. Because that reflection of God at work in us is what is going to be a light for other people, welcoming them in, not only to Norview Baptist Church, but also to your home, into your life, and into your being, because that's where the connection comes. That's where we begin to meet other people and bring them into relationship with Jesus Christ, is by being that light that is reflected from Him. Then we've got the fertile soil. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. The final picture shows us what fertile soil looks like. Soil that is ready to be tended, ready to be watered, ready to receive the fertilizer, ready to see growth take place from within it. The soil has been tilled, seed sown, watered, fertilized, ready to grow for the harvest to be plentiful. This is the future of Norview. This is the future of this church. You may not see it right now, but I'm telling you, the future of this church is fertile soil. Soil that is not going to outshine any one of us, because we are all going to be the plants that are rooted, ready to be harvested. We're the ones that are going to be in the midst of the soil, bringing along with us others that are ready to be planted and rooted and grown alongside of us so that we can be mature and complete, lacking in nothing, so that we can reflect the glory of God to those in Five Points, to those in Norfolk, to those in Hampton Roads, Virginia, the Eastern Seaboard, that to happen, we have to begin with seeds of love. In order for Norview to become a place that is a beacon of hope in all of Hampton Roads, we need to begin with seeds of love. See, we can toss out, money, we can toss out fun times, we can toss out all kinds of things, but if it's not rooted in love, because God first loved us, so we must first love one another, if it's not rooted in love within ourselves, then we're missing the whole point of being gathered here together. You can look at Acts 2, which is one of my favorite verses in all of Scripture. Acts 2, the reason those 3,000 people came together was because they had love one for another, and they grew in that love daily to honor God, to build each other up, and to bring hope to the thousands and tens of thousands of people that were gathered in Israel and Jerusalem at that time. And then from there, they took the word out, and it grew, and it became a movement, to the point that a few chapters later in Acts, the Romans were questioning how these men were able to turn the world upside down. And I want you to know, that is Christianity. That is Christianity. Christianity isn't what allows you to sit here on a Sunday morning and listen to me sputter some words. That's not Christianity. That's just, Mama taught you right. That's, you know what you should be doing. That's great. But what changes the world is the courage to be passionate within yourself for what God has in His Word that He wants to share with you and through you to other people. Now, I'm going to hold myself back because I'm going to get a little bit excited about this. That is planting seeds of love. That's what God wants within each of you. He wants within each of you a tiny seed of love that the Spirit can tend and work and till and prune. You can't leave that out. That hurts. But sometimes we got to get pruned. Sometimes we got to get grafted in. Sometimes some of you have been here for a long time. Sometimes you got to graft in someone new. Sometimes you got to graft in a new family. Duran and his family haven't been here forever. They've been grafted in. They love this church. They are now part of this church. Sometimes we got to graft in. That's what adoption is all about. And I got to tell you, the 5 points area needs to know that Norview is all about loving God and loving individuals. That Norview is all about loving God and loving families. That Norview is all about loving God and loving children. That it's all about loving God and loving teenagers. That it's all about loving God and loving those with disabilities. That it's all about loving God and loving those with difficult pasts. That Norview is all about loving God and loving those with difficult presents and difficult futures. 5 points needs to know that we are all about love. But it's up to us to plant those seeds. It's up to us to help those that are currently struggling, that are ready to be a part of the harvest. It's all about us loving those that we think are the most unlovable and opening our arms and welcoming us all. Because I got to tell you, I'm a wretched human being. I'm a horrible person. I do things wrong. I get grumpy. But I got to tell you, Melanie keeps me straight. It's her love that God uses in my life to guide and direct, to comfort and to strengthen. And I want you to know, this church is an amazing place. God has an amazing you on this journey of spiritual formation? Is Norview on his journey of spiritual formation? Are you individual? What type of soil would you say is within your heart and mind? What are you doing to actively grow your personal faith in Jesus Christ? How are you helping others by sowing or watering or tending or pruning? How are you helping others grow spiritually? What can Norview do to till, sow, water, fertilize, and harvest in the five-point area? Those are things that you need to think about. Those are questions you need to allow to work in your mind and in your heart, to allow God to flourish through you, to allow that seedling to grow up into this big, beautiful plant that God has in store. Now, as we wrap up today, I want you to think about something. Okay? At the end of service, Melinda and Kenan are going to be at the exit points. They're going to have a little heart. On the heart, it says love. That heart is on paper. That's not just any paper. That heart is a seed paper. It is paper with seeds woven into it that I want you to take. I want you to grab one. Grab two if you need. And you can do a couple things with it. One, you can plant it yourself. You can plant it in your yard. You can plant it around the church. You can plant it wherever you want to. And you can water it, and you can tend it, and you can watch it grow. And I want it to be a visual of your faith as you work it into your ground and you see it grow and blossom. Or you can use it as a calling card for someone else. As a little gift you give to someone else that says, hey, you know what? Come check out Norview. We're all about love. Plant this in your yard, see what happens. And I want you to know, there are all kinds of plants and flowers that will bloom from this, none of which are weeds. Again, I don't. It can all be weeds, I don't really know. They listed words, and it said, I'm like, okay, those sound like flowers, sure. Take it and plant it. Take it and give it. It's our gift from my family to you. Something to remember us, something to use, draw those in. At this point, I hope that you would take a minute and consider your heart and mind. My prayer for you is that you will allow the seed of love to take root in your heart and mind, and that together we can bring a great harvest to Norview Baptist Church. With that, I'd like some of the elders to come up. Deacons, elders to come up.